Welcome back, everybody. Yes, I'm back in the kitchen, and some of you have been thinking since my French episode, what's going on? Is he stopping? Is he doing something in French? That was just one episode, don't worry. And the reason I was kind of away is because I'm always working in the background on something else, mostly making courses. And this time is no exception because we have a brand new course that's just launched, just finished, and it's all about soup making. And soup making is a great thing because it's kind of really cold at the moment in the Northern Hemisphere. So this special course about soups is very interesting because it will have you discover a world that you perhaps did not know in terms of soup making. We're exploring the 4 categories given by our dear Auguste Escoffier, taken directly from the Guide Culinaire, where we're learning how to make intricate soup, restaurant-style soup, the way they used to be made before. But instead of just bragging about the course again and again, just the theory, I really wanted to show you in practice in this episode, give you an overview of what we've learned in here, in the Guide Culinaire, to tell you how deep that subject goes. And we're going to be making one of the soup, which is a Puréed soup, but of the simplest category from Escoffier. Just give you some explanation on how it is constructed and the kinds of things that can be done. All right? So, if you're ready, get the apron on and let's start making some good soups. Now, when I decided to make a course on soup, I was not prepared for the amount of depth that the Guide Culinaire was about to show me. I was thinking, oh, we're going to make some different types of soup, it's going to be fun. But as always, in Escoffier style, back in the days, soups is a very, very important subject. It's actually a part of a kitchen skill or a restaurant skill that has kind of been forgotten, and soups is like a simple thing you make at home. But back in the days, it was a really serious business, as important as sauce making. So you have the saucier in a kitchen, which is the most important person in the kitchen, but the soup making guy back in the days, I'm sure had the most important role as well, because soup making in a Guide Culinaire doesn't go for 3-4 pages or something like this. We're talking about 60 pages of soups only, outlining everything from the preparation to the garnish, to the way to serve it, to the different types of soup you can get, plus the classic French one and even some foreign styles of soup. Let me just show you a brief overview of these famous 4 categories that perhaps you did not know at all existed. Now, in no particular order, Escoffier is giving you the first types or category of soup, which is the consommé, aka the clear soups. These are the ones you've learned about. I'm sure you've seen it on documentaries and restaurants and fine dining. It is that crystal clear soup that is served with all kinds of fancy garnishes. Not the easiest to make, and I don't know why I started with that, but just to let you know that these types of soup that requires that clarification portion, you know, with the raft, you have to create that raft that clarifies everything, goes on already for like 6 or 7 pages, something like that, and there's like 50 recipes just for that consommé. After that, the Puréed soup. This is the next category that Escoffier outline is in this framework on here, and this is something that may sound familiar. The Puréed soup, it is vegetables in the modern time that you cook in water and you blitz all together, a bit of butter, and you've got a soup. But here, of course, it goes a little bit more in depth. So the Puréed soup really, as per Escoffier, consists of first a broth, not water. You cook a certain portion of a vegetable that's going to give you the main flavor, okay, that you're going to have. And with that, you're going to have to add a natural thickening agent in the form of either rice, potato, and even bread sometimes. And then with the equal proportion, you mix everything together and you get that perfect kind of consistency, something that is not too liquid, nor too solid. And you typically finish with a bit of butter, a bit of cream, and the typical French kinds of things. So until here, nothing special. But the next category, things start to go a little bit more complex. Velouté soups is where things start to get really, really interesting. And what I like about the way it's outlined everything, Escoffier, is that what you learned previously, for instance, the Puréed soup, you've learned how to puree vegetables or meat, by the way, and mix it with a broth to make your soup. Here, you kind of using the same concept, but you're adding another layer of complexity. So as the name implies, the Velouté soup is based on a mother sauce. Yes, the core of the soup is built on a velouté sauce, which is part of the classic mother sauce, if you know your classic French cuisine. And it is not really used nowadays, the velouté sauce, that much in restaurants, but What I've realized here is that back in the days, the velouté was not just for sauces, it was also used a lot for soups. This is very, very interesting. So the base is a velouté. Instead of the thickening agent that we have, which is potatoes normally, or rice and things like that, that is going to act as a natural thickening agent because it's a roux-based preparation. With that, you're going to have the puree that you've learned to make before in the previous category, which is a puree of vegetables or pureed meats, and an addition of broth to dilute the whole thing and to get the consistency, plus a liaison for these ones that typically is 3 egg yolks and some cream. So you get really the very deep, velvety kind of consistency, which is really one of a kind. But let's have a look at that last category, which is also interesting. Our last category is the cream soup. Now, as the name implies, cream soup, you may be thinking, oh, it's just a standard soup, we put lots of cream, but not at all. And to my surprise, again, when I got to learn about the cream soup, or the crème, as we call them in French, this is the English version, it is actually a soup that is not based on a velouté sauce this time, but on another mother sauce, which is the Béchamel sauce. Another big surprise, the Béchamel is used for sauces and bakes and preparation, but guess what? In the old days, Béchamel was used a lot to make soups. It is a thin version of the Béchamel that is acting as the core of the soup to get something with different type of texture once again. The Béchamel also acts as a thickener because it is also a roux-based preparation, and with that you're also going to have the same concept as before. You're going to have the puree of vegetable or meat with an addition of broth to adjust the consistency, and this time we don't have any eggs but plenty of cream. So you're going to have that Béchamel with cream with the flavor of vegetables or meat, and it gives something absolutely sensational. And all of these are really one of a kind, and through the course we're taking example of some made with meat, some made with fish, some made with vegetables, etc., etc. So for us here, don't worry, we're not going to deep dive into this. We're going to go back to the pureed soup that we've talked about at the beginning. I'm going to show you exactly what it says, what we're going to be making, cooking a vegetable. Okay, have a natural thickening agent, combine the two together with a good broth and a finishing, which is typically butter with a little bit of cream or milk sometimes, as I will show you. And we will have a classic Escoffier style soup. So are you ready? Let's get on the stove and start with the mise en place. So let's begin. So if you have the guide culinaire, you're going to go to page 90 in the English version, and the formula 679 is the soup we're going to be making, the Potage Cormeilles. It's a pureed soup, very straightforward. It is a green bean and potato soup. That's going to give you a great example on how the process that I've explained actually work. Let's look at the mise en place and the ingredients. All right, so we're going to keep this very straightforward, and I'm going to make this really home style friendly. So as I said, for the pureed soup, we need a main vegetable. Here's going to be the green beans. A natural thickening agent. Here's going to be potatoes. Then we've got a liquid that's going to bring the flavor. Typically, it's a homemade white broth, a white bouillon. But to make it home friendly, I've used a store-bought beef broth that I had in my cupboard, good quality. It's a little bit dark, but it's not a problem. This is going to help us to bring flavor in the soup. So warning, it's not vegetarian. Okay, so we've got a flavor in here, and it's going to help us to make that puree of vegetables in here. Once we've got the puree, we adjust the consistency with milk, and we finish with some cream and butter. That's it. Very, very simple. Let me show you the cutting of the vegetables, also straightforward. Now, beans and potato, very simple. So the beans, I've trimmed the end by hand. You broke these little bits here. This is where it grows. Okay, so you get this off and you leave them as is. You got a whole bowl of beans. They're ready. We're going to blanch them. For the garnish on the soup, Escoffier is saying that you can use some of the beans. He's asking to use this. And he wants to have this little diamond shape. So basically what you're going to do, you're going to have your bean on here, and instead of cutting straight like that, you're going on an angle. So there's nothing special. And you're going to do these little shapes, and you're going to end up with these kinds of diamond shapes. That's all what you need. A tablespoon per person, something like this. And you set this aside for later. Now the potatoes, always keep them in cold water. So you peel them, and they just need to be thinly sliced. So it's an émincé, so I'm just cutting a potato in half. There's really nothing special. You can make slices like 2 or 3, but if you're lazy, really, you could get away by making what? Cut this in 3 pieces like that. And then when you're here, you just, make sure you make something really thin. You don't care about the shape here because everything's going in the blender, so who cares? We just want to make sure this is going to be cooking quickly. Okay, so this is just a rough émincé, thin slices that we're going to use and cook in the same time as the beans. So all the potatoes like this. So I am done. My green beans are ready. We're going to blanch them. The potatoes have been thinly sliced, reserved in water, and I've got here the garnish required, which is the diamond-shaped beans that will be blanched as well just before serving. And now we're ready to go on the stove. Make sure you measure all the other elements, the liquid, the butter, the milk, etc., before you start. So let's begin the cooking process. So Escoffier is telling us, very simple, the beans need to be blanched for 5 minutes on boiling water. So you got some salt. I've got all of my beans and I'm going to put them in. I'm going to put a timer on and leave them to blanch for 5 minutes. Time is up. Heat off. I'm going to rinse this as I said. My beans are ready. They've been blanched. I've rinsed them and they look good, but we're going to have now to cook them with the potatoes. Potatoes are thinly sliced and we're going to have to blitz everything with a stick blender or an immersion blender. So if they're whole like this, it's going to be awkward. So what I'm going to do here, simply, I'm just going to roughly chop these into manageable pieces and do that for all of the beans. Once your beans have been cut, you drain the water out of the potatoes. And what I'm going to do now, instead of having everything separately, I'm going to put my beans with my potatoes because they have to be stewed in butter together. And then I can go on the stove with my clean pan and we start the cooking process. So as you can see, it's not because it's Escoffier that things have to be complex. We're using the same pot. I've got my vegetable. We're going to stew this in butter, so about 20 grams is enough. So I'm putting this and I'm going to let the butter melt and then add the vegetables in. So the heat not too high, medium maximum. And then I've got my butter. Got everything in. Okay. And toss everything to make sure you coat everything in butter. And I'm going to leave this as stewing, but it's just to release the flavor a little bit. No seasoning for now, the seasoning is after. So I'm going to leave this for 5 minutes or something just to warm up. And then I'm going to add the bouillon. Perfect, so that has been simmering for about stewing for 5 minutes on low heat. And now we can add some of the broth. So let me do that here. Okay, so what I'm doing, I've got the vegetables on here. And like a normal soup, I'm going to add about 350 milliliters of broth on here. And you may be thinking, oh, this is exactly the same as when we make soup at home, right? I cook a vegetable, I put some liquid in there, use my stick blender, and off you go, I've got a soup. But here, this is where things start to differ. So in the Escoffier styles of pureed soup, they are made of different components. So what you need to first do here is to make an actual thick style of puree of vegetables. So the reason we've got a little bit of broth only here, it is only to help cooking the vegetable and then help the processing and the pureeing of the whole lot. But this is going to help us to just get that initial kind of very thick type of puree that does not look like a soup at all. Okay, so it may sound a bit abstract, but we're going to leave this to cook on medium heat, as it says in the book, and we're going to leave this to simmer gently, no raging boil, otherwise you're going to lose too much liquid, and wait for everything to be cooked so we can start the pureeing process. So for the visual clue, simmering, you've got this gentle, very gentle boil. If you want, you can put a lid 3/4 of the way, not totally closed, to limit the evaporation. And I'll put a timer, I'll tell you how long it took me to cook these. So it's been about 15 minutes, so ballpark figure 15 to 20 minutes on the simmer. The vegetables are cooked, so typically you take the potatoes, you press with your finger, it's cooked. It's good enough. And now I'm going to take this on the sides and we're going to use a stick blender and turn this into a puree. Now, of course, an immersion blender, I've got one, it's easier, but if you don't have that, if you just have a stick blender, you go through, you know the drill. And then processing the whole lot until it's all processed. Once you've got your puree, you take this, you have a bowl with a sieve, and we're going to pass everything through a sieve. So you see the consistency that I've got? That doesn't look like a soup. So very slowly, back and forth, you press down gently, not too much neither, and you make sure you pass everything through. So we're really refining the texture here. Perfect. So now you've got your puree base. This is the puree, it's not a soup. Every single puree soup from Escoffier starts with that base element, which is a puree of vegetables or meat or anything. Okay, it can be fish or anything like that. Once you've got this, now we need to dilute this to the right consistency and turn it back into a soup, or turn it into a soup. Here, it's happening with milk. Sometimes it is broth. So it says in the book, we need to bring this to the boil before we add it in here. So I'm going to clean the pan I've used, a large pan. I'm going to put that in, warm up the milk, and then we're going to mix everything together. So my puree is back in my pan on here. I'm bringing this back to a simmer. There's another step for Escoffier, typically where it says where you have to simmer this for another 10 minutes and scoop up any impurities and stuff like that. It's a bit over the top, so I'm not doing it. But what I'll do though, I never tried a green bean soup before. It doesn't have the color, but it's got the freshness of the beans in there. But definitely some salt. Okay, so my milk, I think, is about ready. I'm going to add it in. So now you can see it's very thick. And now we're in control of the consistency. We've started with something very thick, and we're adding another liquid slowly so we can control how thin or thick we want that soup. We don't want to flood it with liquid. Now I'm using the exact measurement from the book, so I'm sure there's not too much to worry about here for the amount of liquid, and we can add some more afterwards. Okay. So now, you see, you get a slightly better color, okay, on here. And the consistency is now the one of an actual soup, but a puree soup. Let me take a spoon to show you. All right, so let's look at the consistency. Before it was a puree, and now we've got the puree soup consistency. It coats the spoon very much. Look at my finger here, a very clear and thick mark on here. And the soup is not finished. Here we're gonna check the seasonings. I've just said it. It needs some salt, and I think I'm gonna be, a bit rogue. I'm gonna add some black pepper. Typically it's white pepper, but a bit of pepper in there. And then we have the final touches. So the soup is not finished. That's the consistency. The final touch is butter and cream. So to show you in something, a bit of a nice pan, I'm going to transfer this to a smaller pan, and I'm going to add the last touch, which is the butter and the cream. So for a better view, I've transferred the Potage Cormeilles, the pureed soup, into a smaller pan. So this is the consistency. I'm bringing this to a very, very light simmer. And it is not over, because you can see it's quite thick, but there is now the final consistency adjustment, the final touches. Puree soup, typically from Escoffier, 100 grams of butter per liter of soup. Here we've got 500 or 600 ml, so it will be at least 50 grams of butter if you want to go only with butter. In the modern world, I know that a lot of people don't like butter, so what I'm doing half butter, half cream. And it really adds something extra, some silkiness into the mix. It really changes the flavor. So first a bit of cream, then you taste. Check the seasoning, and just before serving, we're going to add the butter. The butter is the final step. Up, one piece of butter, very slowly, no boiling. And when there is the butter that's going in, and you only put it just before you serve. So you just stir until it dissolved, and then you're ready to go. Be very careful when it comes to the adjustment. Don't go thinking, oh, you know what? I don't like the color, I'm going to add more cream, or oh, I'm going to add some more broth or whatever, because first, you're going to lose that consistency that is paramount. This is a pureed soup. It is meant to be semi-thick. And secondly, very quickly with vegetables, you're going to lose the taste. If you dilute the soup too much, not only is it going to become liquid, but the taste of the vegetables is going to totally disappear, honestly. And it goes super fast. And I've done lots of tryouts and lots of soups in this course, I can tell you. Respect the measurements. So here I had my little bit of cream, my little bit of butter, and I'm not touching anything. It's ready, we're serving. So for the service, here we are, the Potage Cormeilles. For the garnish, you just use the green beans as has been cut in this little diamond shape, slightly blanched, a little bit of seasoning, and that's it. Escoffier always says that the garnishes you add are just there to complement and never overpower the taste. Here we've got green beans. It is very delicate, it's very special, so you don't want to change that flavor at all. It is only one of the dozens of other soups that can be made just in that puree soup category, and imagine the whole framework contains 4 categories. And these are the things that we're exploring in our soup course. So if you're interested, if I pique your interest, the link is in the video description. You're going to have access to the course page, see all the soup that we're making, and we offer, as always, an early bird price for the course until next week if you want to deep dive into this. So I hope you enjoyed that little introduction about soup. It is really, really fascinating. Absolutely love it, and I'm sure to make more soup later on during the colder days on the channel for you to discover. For me, I will leave you with that beautiful picture, and I see you all next time for another video on the French Cooking Academy. Take care all. Bye-bye.
Whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry.